Earlier today, I was in a vehicle driving the beautiful I-5 corridor from Long Beach to Sacramento when my phone started ringing, and it was one Dave Kempa, who wanted to let me know that someone that that he knows very well would be on the show as our guest host, and was like talking about how excited he was about, all of us, this being a all ladies episode, and he's just really looking forward to it. And then I had previously told him that I was like really excited about the idea of meeting Robin, because I've enjoyed everything that I've read of hers. So I got into this Zoom room, and there she was reading a book, and so with a glass of red wine. And so now we're here, and Kempa's not. So like, let's do a little story time. Let's do a ladies' hour story time.
Yeah.
It's ladies' night.
This is ladies' night.
We always dance That didn't need it.
Did the boys not dance?
They will sing along sometimes. They don't usually dance.
That's too bad. They're missing out.
It's not a thing.
Yeah. There's definitely times when Flo and I are like sit dancing, and
for sure.
Yeah.
They're both just like, are you done now?
Yeah.
Do you guys ever do that thing where you're just doing like a very common mundane activity, but you like narrate it?
That happens all the time. That's sometimes how we end up singing and dancing when we're preparing for the show, because I always tell people, you can't be friends with me if you can't tolerate me singing relatable song lyrics to whatever it is that's happening in your life.
Yeah. I have a friend who takes it a notch further, and she actually like tries to turn real music songs and like twist the lyrics into like, I can sometimes do that, but for the most part, it's just like, I'm walking up the stairs right now. Like, you know what I mean?
Yeah, totally.
My dog a lot.
So you're my friend Tiffany, and apparently you're friends with my sister. So that's fun. I didn't know you were friends with my sister, but my sister can turn the lyrics to any song into something related to what she's doing right now.
Yeah. I don't think it's your sister, but it might be. Maybe she has a long lost sister.
You're not friends with a 50-year-old woman who lives in Western Pennsylvania? No, that's not your best friend?
We didn't know she knew Kempa either, but here we are,
Yeah. Way to bring it back around, Shannon.
Okay, so speaking of this, I hop onto the Zoom and I'm like, why did I think that this might have been like one of our like intergenerational podcasts, like episodes, because I realized as I was looking at the thumbnail, I thought, because I looked at the thumbnail on her articles, and I just like, I think it's the hair and like the angle and like the very professional stature, but I was expecting somebody who was older than us, and then I get on this Zoom and see a very young, younger than me looking woman, and I think to myself, where did I go wrong in this assumption? Like, what? Robin is not a name of a previous generation. Like, I don't know where I got the assumption. And then I pulled up the art and I was like, that's why, because the thumbnail was giving me older woman vibes.
Okay.
I was saying your thumbnail has old lady vibes.
That was a very graceful way of telling me that I look old in that photo.
Again, it's a small photo. When I clicked on it, I could see where I got where the error of my ways. But when I looked at it, when I saw the small version, I was not expecting you to be this young. Like, you're
Thank you.
Yes, and maybe it's also because of what you write about and how, like, it's very.
Wait, you thought an old person was writing what I write about?
I thought it was. It has a maturity to the perspective.
Oh, thank you. Okay. Well, I don't know. I feel old most days. I feel like 32.
Same.
I feel like 32 is like you're starting to like become an actual adult. Like, most days I don't feel like I should be allowed into that club, but nevertheless, here I am at 32. But yeah, I was so proud of that photo too, because I felt like it looked very professional. But like, I don't like it because they told me to smirk a little bit, which I mean is a natural resting face for me anyway. So it wasn't that hard, but I have like little lines. And I was like, oh God. And then they used that photo. And I was like, okay, all right.
It's not actually any like signs of age. That's the thing. Like, I think it's just the hair, the side profile, the fact that it was small. And then also like the lip, like there's something about it that just gave me like, oh, this is a woman, you know, like,
this is a woman.
Yes.
All right. Okay. Well, I should sometime, if I ever see you in person, I'll show you my very first driver's license from when I was all of 15 and a half. And I look like a 40-year-old woman in that photo. And that's from like 15 years ago now. So
I look like Whoopi Goldberg in mine. So welcome to the club.
Whoopi is a good looking woman. She's cute.
Yeah, I was 16 though, and didn't even have locks at the time. And I also have always had eyebrows. So the fact that I was given vibes of a woman old enough to be my mother who doesn't have eyebrows and had a completely different hairstyle is troubling.
Yeah, it's funny. I think I look a lot like my mom, but the other day I was having lunch with my dad and I was joking, like, I can't use those Instagram filters or like the TikTok filters where you turn into a guy because I look like my dad. Like I look like him. And it freaks me out. So I can't use them. I can't ever even make like a video about it. And so he didn't believe me. So I did it at lunch and like took a screenshot and showed it to him. And then he was like, yeah, never do that again. So I get it. I look a lot like both my parents, actually. But
that's awesome.
Anyway, hi, it's so nice to be here.
It's great to have you. And you were going to tell us how you know Kempa.
Yes. Okay, so
I feel like this is a good story.
Kempa used to work for me.
Oh.
In a very roundabout way.
Okay.
Yeah, so way back in the day, I was a associate editor, special sections editor at Comstock magazine.
Here we go.
All of like 25, 26. And it was like my first real like editor journalism job. And Kempa was in our stable of freelance writers. And so I would occasionally work with him as his editor. And he would write things for my section and I would edit him or I would back read him. And then a few times we would like go out and I think we got like drinks one time with me and another editor. And then the No Flax Allowed group is like a journalist only thing here in town. So I'd see him there. So I've known Kempa for like 7 or 8 years now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. He knew me when I was a baby.
I love that we are now about to do a show with the 2 women of Voices River City and Kempa's former boss.
Yeah, I like that too.
I like being called Kempa's former boss.
It's giving me all the things. It's all the things I need. We don't need it to be true. It just needs to be said.
I know Kempa's going to listen to this, so I'm just going to refer to myself as his boss, even though both of us know I never was.
Well, Kempa, thank you for inviting your boss, your former boss, on the show. We really appreciate it.
Thank you for inviting me. I know I have to stoop to be on his podcast, but it's okay.
Well, let's show him how great this show is going to be and get this party started.
Let's do it.
He's going to wish that he was a lady.
Voices, the things they said, voices, some from those dead, all the voices heard. Voices, things we say, voices, they're in your head, all the voices heard.
Why, hello everyone, you have Flo.
And Shannon.
And today we have a special guest with us who we've already been talking to and about, but Robin Epley, one of the opinion editors with the Sacramento Bee. And so we are excited to have Robin on with us today. Welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I am an avid listener.
We love it when we have listeners on because you already know the format of the show. And if you're like Nyla, you'll probably also do our outro with us as well. So it's always fun to have you on. So today we are actually diving into, of course, one of the things we do is talk about what's happening in town. And we do a lot of reading of the publications in town. And so the Sacramento Bee is top among them, us talking about and responding to and thinking about what's been written. And so we actually have a few of your pieces that we are going to dive into the details of today. So why don't we start with some context setting around what's been happening over the past year as it relates to homelessness and some recent decisions that were made and some of the controversy we're going to get into.
Yeah, did you want me to do that?
Go for it.
Yeah, go for it.
Well, I actually have only been back in Sacramento for about 6 months. In fact, actually, yesterday was my 6th month. But
Happy anniversary.
I know.
I'll drink to that.
Thank you.
Where were you, if you don't mind us asking?
Oh yeah, no. Before that, I was the editor of 2 papers out on the Mendocino coast.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did that for about 18 months. And then before that, I was in Chico for about a year. So
Okay.
Right after the campfire. But then before that is when I knew Kempa.
When you knew Kempa, okay.
I like it. Now
it makes sense. Now we have a timeline. Got you.
Perfect.
I have a timeline.
Campfire work, but now it all makes sense. Okay.
Yeah. So since I've been back, like obviously I was born and raised in Sacramento in unincorporated Foothill Farms, North Islands area. And so when I started the job, like one of the first things I started asking around to my dad and people I still knew who lived in the area, I was like, what's like the number one thing that like you would like to see the Sac Bee tackle? And like the homelessness issue, like it is so bad out here. And it seemed to be just kind of this like running theme. And so it was really something that I wanted to start tackling just from the ground running. And in particular, the most recent issue has been this proposal from the county that they were going to close the Project Roomkey shelters. And Project Roomkey is, I'm just going to explain it in case your listeners don't know. I'm sure they're all highly intelligent people who already know. It's 3 motels that are kind of scattered around town that the county, through federal funding mostly, but some of it's been from the state as well, have been housing homeless people who are particularly vulnerable to COVID during the pandemic. So it's really a pandemic era program. It was funded, I believe at first, I might get this wrong, but I think it was first funded federally, and then the state kind of picked it up, and then Newsom turned the project into Project Roomkey, which is trying to provide people with actual homes and not just motel rooms.
Right.
But Sac County, and now it's back to federal funding because the state ended that and put it all into Roomkey. So it's been kind of like a merry-go-round of funding. And they found out that the FEMA funding, they knew that the FEMA funding was going to be ending, I believe in March. And every time I talk to somebody about how much it actually costs, the number seems to be going up, but it apparently costs anywhere between like 1.4 and 1.6 million dollars a month, which sounds like a lot of money, but the county's budget is $6 billion. So this really isn't that much money. And it's currently housing a little more than 330 people. And so they announced in, I want to say late February, that they were going to be ramping down this program. And it kind of came as a shock because we didn't really know that was going to happen. And then I started talking about it in my columns, and the amazing Teresa Cliff kind of took it on as well. And so between the two of us, we've been covering this a lot. And they just announced the other day that while they are going to be closing the first of the 3 motels, I believe it's a La Quinta in the River District, they aren't going to be closing the other 2 because they were able to find some funding to make it last through June. Now, end of June, who knows what's going to happen? So that's just a few weeks away. But there's, I want to say there's like, I don't know the exact number, but I'm going to say like 120 people, I think, at this first place who have had to find other places to go or have been giving 21-day vouchers. And in a lot of cases, these people, I believe over half of them are over 55 years old. They were put in this program in the first place because they're especially susceptible to COVID. A couple of them have been kicked out of the program. Several of them, as Teresa reported several months ago, the motels were turning them away and wouldn't let them into the room. So this whole program has kind of just had like one problem after another, but closing the program down and pretending like they're going to be able to find housing or some sort of situation or even just a roof over their heads for 300 plus people is ridiculous. And giving them a 21-day voucher is not enough for people who have been there for 6 months or a year and have been able to find housing. I don't understand why the county thinks 21 days is enough. So that's the long background to this.
Long background. Thank you for the long background.
Yeah.
And so now we obviously there was this, the decision was up for grabs about what was going to happen with the funding. And so they've decided to, as you mentioned, keep 2, close 1. And then there was another decision that was made around how to distribute funding in the county. And this, I think, goes into the equal versus equitable conversation that we constantly are having. So can you say a little bit more about what happened with this $25 million that was allocated by the county, what their decision was, and maybe we can talk a little bit about the difference?
I'm wondering, can we, before we get to the $25 million, can we talk about like the list of projects that the county is currently like? So in your piece, you talk about the housing and homelessness priority issue area, which includes, money for landlord engagement. And we talk about like countywide data infrastructure and all of this sort of like, where is money actively going right now? And then lead us into the $25 million piece, because the whole sort of like the centerpiece of your opinion here is like there are Band-Aid, the county continues to create Band-Aids when there's actual money that could be spent, right, on like actual life-saving programming.
Yeah, this is so weird to me because I interviewed the county on this and they kept bringing up all of these programs that they do. And the programs that they were bringing up during this interview was like, we're sending out nursing teams and we're, providing outreach. And I was like, that's great. But they need beds and houses and roofs and 4 walls. Like a nursing team is they're spending $10 million of it. Let me backtrack. Anyway, so ignoring we're just going to set aside the CARES Act funding debacle for just a hot second. We'll come back to it. Yeah, that would be the first round of federal funding. The second round of federal funding is called ARPA, and that's an acronym. I always mess it up. I'm pretty
American Rescue Plan Act.
Thank you. I always mess up what the P is for. I'm like prevention something. Anyway,
so a thing the county doesn't do.
Yeah. So the ARPA money coming to the county is, I believe, $301 million. And it's coming in two sections, right? So this first round of funding from ARPA, which is already the second round of funding, just to make it more confusing, is being allocated now, right? And so one of the things the county did was contract with a company called Deloitte to put out a survey to the community to see what the community wanted, the people of Sacramento County wanted the county supervisors to allocate this money to. Except one of the problems with this survey of many not the least of being which they didn't offer it in any language other than English.
Correct.
Is that they didn't identify the demographics of the people who were responding. Correct. And so in order to kind of like the supervisor started asking questions, and instead of sending Deloitte's surveyors back to the drawing board for a new survey, which they'd already paid $600,000 for,
Deloitte is not cheap.
No, they decided instead to take $25 million out of this ARPA funding and give each supervisor $5 million. And this plan, I believe this was like back in November, was supposed to like help each supervisor address the unique needs of their district, which on the surface seems like a good idea. Like there are unique needs in each district, and Serna's not going to know what Desmond's district needs, and he's not going to know what Natoli's district needs, and vice versa. And anyway, so they decided to do this, and I wrote a column about it being kind of like, why should we trust you with $25 million after what you did with the CARES Act money? But once it came out that they were closing Project Roomkey, some people started calling for them to instead use this $25 million that they had already carved out of the budget to instead use it to keep Project Roomkey alive. And so that was one of the things I called for in my article was, there will be a second round of funding. And if you guys want to allocate money to each district to use for specific things within your district, that's fine. But $5 million to each is just kind of a surface level attempt to address what really went wrong. And this money is supposed to be used for pandemic specific emergencies that occurred. And very clearly Project Roomkey falls under that. One of the other things to keep in mind is that within this $301 million, they've decided, I think there's a lot of numbers in my brain all the time, but I'm pretty sure it's about 59 million. I might be a little off, that they decided was going to go specifically towards housing and homelessness. Like these were like 3 pillars that the county decided, and please don't ask me what the other priority issue pillars were, but one of them was housing and homelessness. And the 59 million, if that's the correct number, I can't remember if it's like 53 or 59, but it's around there, was like 10 million for landlord engagement and 5 million for data infrastructure and another 1.5 for that nursing team. And I guess it was 1.5, not 10, sorry. 700,000 for another pilot nursing program to provide outreach, $160,000 for another information database, and an additional 160,000 for 2 contracted navigators to work in the River District for a 1-year pilot program. None of this would actually provide housing for like the 58,000 low-income Sacramentans in our county who are struggling to find housing right now, much less the 10,000 homeless people, like actually homeless tonight on the streets that we even know about. Right. And the point in time survey is going to be coming out in June. And that's going to just, everybody's waiting for these numbers. And like, we already know that this is a problem. We don't need to wait for those numbers to tell us that we have more than 10,000 people on the streets right now. It's just, it's very stressful.
We just continue to find ourselves, this county in particular, the city as well, our local government continues to find itself in these positions where they are willing to spend so much money on everything except for the root issue that's going to, like, getting to the root and really helping like eradicate these systemic issues, like not having enough housing, right? Like we need beds.
Start with beds.
I mean, we can go and we can talk about this a little bit in the piece that where it's titled Sacramento County has to do more, Sacramento City and County have to do more, that piece by the editorial board. It's this like constant back and forth fight about whose responsibility it is to, provide whatever service. And then they, someone comes up with this incredible plan to, contract 2 navigators to work in the river district. But what's that actually going to do? Like, navigators' primary charge is actually to help people get into housing. Like,
yeah, there's no housing to get into.
Right.
I don't know. I wish I knew what their long game was. And I have no doubt, like, you don't go into county management or city management. Like, I've covered enough local politics in my career thus far to know that the people in these jobs, like, do care. And they wouldn't be there if they didn't think that they were helping in some way. But like, this is not it, sis. Like, you have a lot of people telling you, like, we need beds, we need roofs, we need this, we need you not to end Project Roomkey. And like, they're still stuck on this path of like navigators and nursing outreach. And I'm just like, when are you going to start providing housing? When are the supervisors going to start like working with developers to put like affordable housing? And when are you going to start standing up against like the NIMBYs in Sacramento and starts admitting that you have a real problem, and stop blaming it on mental illness and drug use and lack of what do they call it, service resistance.
I think
I got fired up.
Like, this gets into the issue that like Flo can expertly talk about, which is like the equity issues that exist within our county, right? Like, and that starts with something like providing a study or a survey out to people in only one language, and not, identifying the demographics of folks, who have responded.
I'm going to call Deloitte out on that, because I'm not a person who's against having contractors. Many of the grants and programs that I've worked on have had contractors because staff have a certain capacity and you sometimes need additional support. But when you get an organization that is supposed to be as, experienced and is as pricey as Deloitte, and then they come in and they do a job that that many of us could have done for free and much better, and they got well over $500,000 to do it. It's frustrating, because survey development is something that you're supposed to come in with expertise on. And the first thing you need to figure out is like, what is your target population? And then you need to sample that population for whatever your outcomes are. And if you don't know, if you're doing just a general like sort of census level then you're trying to get as many people as possible and get a representative sample. But if you're trying to do something more targeted, then you need to think about who do you need to hear from, and you need to understand who you did and did not hear from. Otherwise, you don't know, facially, right, if you are representing your target demographic. And so to not do that is just, it represented a level of ignorance, a level of inexperience, and and the fact that the county didn't demand more from their contractor, that they paid handsomely, is really, really a problem for me. And then it dovetails into the issues of like, if you have, bad data going in, you're going to make bad, and you're using that as the premise to make recommendations, then you're going to make decisions that are faulty on their face. And so that's, I think what we're seeing here is like, okay, we know the data's not good, so let's just give everybody $5 million. And it's like, equality versus equity. Yes, equality is giving everybody the same thing, but we clearly know that there are geographic differences between the 5 county districts in terms of what they need, especially on this issue. If this $5 million were just going out and it was just like, hey, answer the needs in your community, this is your $5 million allocation, supervisors, that would actually make more sense to me, because then there are needs in each district, and they at least could address those. But for this to be about homelessness, and for there not to be an additional analysis of like where these dollars need to go to make the biggest impact, is silly. And so it's going to mean that a district that has most of the has most of the population that's unhoused is going to then only get the same allocation as a district that has more trees than people. Like, it does not make sense.
Yeah. I mean, the other part of this, in the same way that you're calling out Deloitte for their, whack ways of providing surveys to the county, I think it also stands to call the county out. Did we really have to spend $600,000 on this survey, period? Or, because I think we
don't
know
how much those go for.
I mean, it's expensive. It is expensive to contract out with agencies to lead a study of that magnitude. But I think my point is that we have this county that is so hell-bent on spending money in all of the ways that money doesn't have to be spent, rather than spending money in the ways that it needs to be in order to save actual lives. Because you didn't need a survey to tell us that, you know, people are suffering and folks are in need of housing, and they're in need of more social services, and they're in need of more, you know, local government support in order to like just aid in their just like basic survival, right? Like then we can get into like all of the additional layers of, you know, a person
we were
actually
talking about this. Yeah, I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, it's okay.
But we have like a community advisory board to the editorial board that we just started. We just talked about this the other day. I can't remember his last name off the top of my head. It's the gentleman who works at Loaves and Fishes. His first name is Joe. Joe Smith. Joe Smith, thank you. How did I forget Joe Smith? He's on our community advisory board, and we were talking about this the other day with him, and he was saying like we're so in love with data, but we don't stop to look at what that data says. We just gather it and then like look at all the data we have on this, but then we don't actually use it for anything. Like we spend money getting it, and then we spend money looking at it, and then nothing ever happens.
This has been the reality for this county for as long as I have worked in it. We continue to try to you spend money on taking trips to here and taking trips to there to see how all of these different areas run their programming for folks experiencing homelessness, and how people do, you know, pilot programs of like rest stop bathroom situations. That was a thing. You know, we had the pit stop in the River District, and that was a city thing. And, you know, all of these different safe ground was a thing, not Safe Ground in its original iteration, but Safe Ground, you know, city sanctioned Safe Ground is a thing that they had been looking into for years and years and years. And just all of these different ways that our local government is willing to spend money to reassure them that there is a program that exists that will help deal with the crisis, but rather than actually dealing with the crisis, because we know as advocates, it's not like the lack of programming is an issue, but the lack of housing is the root problem. The lack of affordable housing is the actual issue at hand. Like that's what needs to be addressed. And it has to be addressed in an equitable manner. Like you don't give Land Park the exact same amount as you give like CV Circle, right? Like these are two neighborhoods who there are any number of things that create unique situations for them socioeconomically. And I think that is what is so disappointing about the county, is that they're just refusing to listen to the voices of the people who have been advocating for years and years and years of, you know, and the people who in the last couple with the people's budget have been shouting until their throats are raw about these budgetary issues that need to be addressed. And they're just like, no, thanks. Like, but no.
I like that's so important that people are paying attention, because it's so easy for the county to fly under the radar, and it doesn't get as much attention as the cities. And I mean, Sac City just completely blows it out of the water in terms of coverage most of the time. And so I feel really lucky to cover the county, because it's, you know, I'm constantly like finding these things that are going on and being like, what's up with that? What's up with that? Like, why are you guys doing this? Why are you spending money here? Who are you talking to over here? Why are you giving $600,000 to Deloitte for a survey that isn't even valid? Like, I do try to remember, like I said, like these people are in county, like they're in political service for a reason. Like they're all Sac County like residents who like care about the issues too. But like, it's so hard sometimes when you're just like, you're staring at these numbers on a page and you're just like, why would you do this? Why would you not just, like, it's just obvious to me that the root problem is beds and housing. And like, why are you just like clipping away at the edges, hoping to solve the problem? That's not how that works. Like,
no,
it's not a haircut. You can't just take the root, like the trim off. You know what I mean?
Well, I think that's an important segue, into, the challenges that we're having, in terms of, you mentioned NIMBYs, right? The people who believe not in my backyard. And we're certainly seeing that even in the city, that there are people who are not upset with the human rights abuses of not providing safe housing to everyone, because if we are to contend that housing, like clean drinking water and clean air, is a human right, then it needs to be provided for everyone. That's what rights are, right? So when we don't do that, then we have failed in our duty. But there are people who view this more as a problem of convenience and aesthetics than they do as a problem of our failure to ensure that a right is afforded to everyone.
Again, but I feel like that convenience and the aesthetics thing is really just like clipping on the edges of what their root problem is. And their root problem is that they don't like the homeless. They don't like the mentally ill. They don't like people who have drug problems. They don't like people who don't look like them or are in the same class or affluence as they are, because they see them as lesser. Like, that's a human problem, right? Like, for like centuries and generations of all of human history, people look down on those that they feel like they can look down on, right? And I mean, it's a race problem, it's a wealth problem, it's a class problem, and it's people who have bought into the lie that if you're homeless, you've done something to deserve it.
Correct. It's the dogma around personal responsibility that goes too far and that completely lets off the hook for, dare I say, responsibility, the social and contextual factors that shape people's lives.
Absolutely.
And it allows us to be able to view people as disposable. So you're absolutely right in that's the root cause of what we're seeing is we're not connected to our humanity, and we're not offering the same level of support and comfort and empathy to people who may have lived experiences that are different from ours and may have needs that are different from ours as well. Because going back to that issue of equality versus equity, I use the example all the time of, if I just finished a meal and, Robin, you haven't eaten in a few days, and Shannon, you had lunch but not dinner yet, and I order pizza, does it make sense for me to get the same, 3 slices of pizza as the two of you? Like, no, it doesn't. Because I literally just had dinner, and Robin, you haven't eaten in 2 days, and Shannon, you had lunch, so maybe you need a slice or two, I need none, and Robin gets the rest, right? Like, and maybe she'll have enough to be able to save up and have some food tomorrow in case that's not guaranteed, right? And like, we really need to think about that when we're approaching how we distribute funds and how we think about resources, is that like, we are not all the same. And so addressing what we need is very different than just saying, well, it's equal to give everybody the same thing. Well, that's going to mean that I have more than enough food, and now I'm contributing to food waste, and Robin still hasn't been, satiated. Like, that doesn't make sense. And it in many ways, it's a cruelty that we put a nice window dressing on and say, but see, we did it. Everybody got the same. Look, all 5 districts got $5 million. It's not my fault that your representative didn't spend it on da 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 da. And it's like, you're totally missing the point.
To me, like it's when you give everybody the same piece, it's like, that's such base level thinking. That's like a kindergartner's view of how to share things, right? Like, we are adults. We're supposed to be adults. Like, it's not like equality. We should be above that. We should understand the concept of equity, but we don't.
We have talked, people, the board of supervisors heard over, well, they didn't hear, but folks spoke to them over and over and over about issues of equity through the pandemic, just like with vaccine rollout. The whole like idea of equity is nothing that is new to them, or it shouldn't be. Like, they are just choosing the death cult of capitalism that is going to actually kill some people, but
it literally already has.
I mean, 100%. I can tell you the names of people that I know and put shoes on their feet who are now dead because of inaction. Like, there is all of this is just bullshit lack of policy that is actually ending up causing great harm, violence, and even death.
One of the very first columns I wrote when I got here was about vaccine education going on in the unincorporated parts of the county. And like I said, I'm from North Highlands, Foothill Farms area, which is one of the lower vaccination rates in the county. And I found out one of the reasons why that is because there just aren't any like community organizations. I mean, it's not that there aren't any, but there's less community organizations in those areas with lower vaccine rates, as opposed to say like South Sac or better off parts of the county, who the county was contracting with those organizations to get the word out about vaccine clinics, but they just didn't do it in the North Highlands, El Paso Heights, area, because there wasn't anybody. Vaccination rates, which I think it was hovering around 45% when I was. My internet connection is weird. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, we're good. Okay,
sorry, I just got a warning. I think it was hovering around like 45% when I wrote the column, but I'm not sure what it's up to now. But it was a direct correlation between the county not doing the work in the areas that needed it, because they didn't take the time to go find valuable community leaders who could get the word out. And then that's where you got the vaccine hesitancy from, partially. Like, there's obviously a lot going on there, but it just blew my mind because I grew up with these people. Like, I'm from that neighborhood. Like, these are smart, reasonable people who want to live a good life, and they're just being ignored. Like, they're being ignored by the county.
You can't wait until a global pandemic to be able to build trust with your communities and to be able to build bridges. And that's unfortunately the problem. I mean, when you couldn't remember the P in ARPA, right, it's because we don't plan very often. So you weren't expecting that word to be involved. But planning is one of the key tenets of prevention. You have to be thinking about what could happen and then think about the ways to prevent that from happening. And we have not done that. I mean, I think a lot about even the racial disparities and what we've seen. And had we done anything since the Tuskegee experiment was unearthed 50 years ago, we might have been in a very different position, but we didn't. We haven't tried to do any sort of restorative practices on a more global level. We haven't really held institutions to task. Medicine is still plagued with blatant racism, and there are clear differences in everything from pain management to birth outcomes based on race, right? And so all of those things continue to persist. And then you show up in a pandemic and you say, trust me. And it's like, why? And everybody would harken back to Tuskegee. And I say, it's not Tuskegee, it's all the things that have happened in between there, all the missed opportunities you had to build trust that you just completely wasted those opportunities. And so that's why people don't trust you. And quite frankly, it's the logical conclusion that you're not to be trusted because you're not showing up. And you're allowing the voices of the privileged to outweigh the voices of the people who you're supposed to be serving.
And they keep expecting us to trust them. Like, they're just like, oh, trust me. Like, no, you keep continuing to show us, like, the CARES Act money that you misspent, the ARPA money now. Like, why would we trust you? Why? And then they get mad when you call it out in a column.
And most recently, like, we can talk about we can talk a little bit, we've got some time left, but most recently, one of these acts of just reminding us how difficult it is for the county to work toward rapport building and gaining the trust of the community was exemplified in a letter that was sent to the city and to the city council. by Ann Edwards, who is, she took over as county executive after Nav Gill was, well, we'll just say after he vacated his seat. And this is just, it's another, like, so the context for this is at a city council meeting, there's conversations around making sure that homeless programming is funded, making sure that the city is doing their part. And at one point, Council Member Mai Vang of District 8 asks Bridget Dean, who is the lead of DCR, the Department of Community Response, you know, what's up with county funding and DCR? And she's like, there isn't any. And at which point Councilmember Mai Vang says, you know, this is the time for, if you're listening, call your county supervisor, because, you know, the funding is not being allocated in the spaces that the people have said it is most needed. And so that really ruffled the feathers of county executive leadership. And a 2-page letter that was incredibly comprehensive, detailing, quoting Councilmember Vang, Bridget Dean, and, you know, it gets into everything that the county does do, which is contract with community-based organizations. That's sort of that's the boiler of it all. Robin, the editorial board wrote a piece on this, which will kind of like backtrack us a little bit, but I wanted to make sure that we mention that letter, because I think it's a really important piece on the chessboard of city and county and this whole game that is being played. So just like, yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, I'm trying to pull up the letter, but I don't think it's actually linked in the story, which is my bad. But yeah, this is an editorial collaboration between Yousef Baig and I, and because Yousef covers the city and I cover the county, and we've just been watching them kind of point fingers back and forth at each other for as long as I've been in my position now, which is, you know, 6 months, and Yousef's been here much longer. And this letter was so, I was shocked that she had sent it, frankly, like knowing that it was going to get out, knowing that the media was going to cover it. Like, she very clearly did that on purpose. And I mean, I just feel like the only thing possible that I can say about this at this point is that people see you. We see you pointing fingers at each other. We see you like not getting anything done. Like, it's literally my job to watch you. Like, right. So you're being watched. What makes you think that, like, just trying to blame it on the other person, blame it on the county, blame it on the city, blame it on the county, blame it on the city is gonna get us anywhere? Like, you're just alienating voters who, like, even in your most, you know, cynical of takes, like, that's what you shouldn't be alienating voters at the very least. Do something. Stop sending letters back and forth. Actually work together. Don't just talk about it. And that's all it is. It's just talk. I would love to see somebody step up on both sides and actually, like, start holding meetings together in front of the public and start answering questions from advocates and start talking about, like, how to get to the root core of the problem. If it's not beds for some reason, then tell us what it is. Fix the problem.
Yeah.
And I realize that that's a hard ask. Like, that's not, nobody is like solving this. Like, homelessness is an issue up and down the state, across the nation. Like, it's all over, but there's got to be somebody who is also struggling with the same problems that Sacramento County is. Like, why can't we work together? Like, this is the point of government. Do your jobs.
Yeah, totally. I mean, we do have this opportunity coming up here over at McKinley Village. There's a guy named John Morales and his husband Nicholas Berger who are hosting this brunch to talk about homelessness and
appropriating the word SNAP. Now it's SNAP of Sacramento, which is not the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program. It's apparently an acronym
for safe neighborhoods and parks.
Right.
So, you know, I mean, if we want to like really start to get the wheels turning around solving problems,
but apparently the topics that are going to be covered at this brunch and mimosas
on my gosh
at 10 a.m. at McKinley Village are protecting our families and homes from encampments and voting for city council representation. So that's fun.
Yeah,
protecting
super
our
exciting.
families and homes from encampments and voting for city council representation. Awesome.
Can we just talk about how the flyer has donuts and quiche and like little rolled up prosciutto on it? Like,
yeah, I mean, it's a very specific kind of brunch, one that I generally would not attend. I mean, it's at 10 a.m. so I generally don't like to leave my house on the weekends, you know, before noon, but this is something that I actually might be interested in. I don't spend enough time listening to folks at community meetings, so that's.
And apparently there will, if you were worried about your security and safety, if you decide to attend, Shannon, there will be at least 3 security guards at their upcoming anti-homelessness sprint.
Oh, phew. So, you know, I was worried about that.
Yeah, I was worried about that.
I don't need to bring my bear spray then.
You might still need to.
Yeah, right. But really though, like that shit is really fucking problematic. But I think that when we are talking about the community and the community's influence on change making and, you know, just like making sure that voices are heard, we've got the chair of the Measure U committee sitting right here with us who can, it's a sort of like taking us off the track a little bit, but I think it can probably get brought back around when we talk about participatory budgeting and how like we can really reach sort of equitable solutions around funding stuff in our communities. So Flo, I know we're plugging Measure U and participatory budgeting.
Yes. So this past week, the city of Sacramento has officially launched its participatory budgeting pilot project. This is a long time coming. Back in October of 2019, we invited the participatory budgeting project to one of our Measure U meetings to talk about what it is and introduce the concept. And we had several really enthusiastic members of our committee who were dedicated to making sure that this went through and have worked on it for years. And so what participatory budgeting is essentially, it's this democratic process where community members directly decide how to spend part of the budget. And so Sacramento has set aside $225,000 for implementation. So that's to cover the contractors and some of the outreach activities and things like that. And then an additional $1 million to be able to be determined how to spend by members of the community. And so it's basically like a different way to manage public money and to engage people. And for the first round of funding, the committee decided to prioritize 2 specific geographic areas, the northeastern and the southeastern sections of the city. And so they'll each get a chance to decide how to spend half of the funds, which is about $500,000 each. Now, our committee recognizes that $500,000 does not go far when we're thinking about public projects, but also this is a pilot project. And so the more people we have participate and the more of a need and demand, the better opportunity we have to be able to get more money in the future. And the mayor on Thursday said, you know, that he was really committed. He felt like the whole budget should be subject to a process like this. And so the success of it really could have a greater influence. Some of the things that the People's Budget and other advocates have been saying, really listen to us and think about how to spend these dollars. You may be the stewards and the decision makers, but you really should be acting at the direction of your constituents. So what this means for us right now in terms of implementing the project is that starting on April 4th and continuing until May 15th, community members will be able to help to brainstorm some of the ideas and some of the project ideas at collection events online and in idea boxes all around the city. And so be on the lookout for flyers and electronic communications and things on social media, letting you know how you can contribute your ideas. And then starting on the 23rd of May and lasting through July 24th, volunteers will work with the staff and consultants to develop the proposals. And so they're gonna make sure that they flesh them out, figure out how much things will cost, because obviously it's $500,000. And the council has committed that whatever the community chooses, they will vote to support. And then starting in August, the entire month of August, residents will be able to vote on which proposals to fund. And there's also a mini grant program that exists within this of $5,000 for organizations to conduct outreach and engagement across the city in the neighborhoods. And so you actually can apply for that if you are a part of an organization that would be interested in doing that. And the deadline for that is actually this coming Friday. So if you are interested, please be sure to apply. And there also are several information sessions to talk about that. There's actually one coming up this Thursday. If you are in the process of working on your application and have some questions, please feel free to join. And finally, if you want to find out more information about participatory budgeting, you can go to cityofsacramento.org/PB. That's P as in participatory and B as in budgeting, and you can get more information there. So we hope everybody participates.
That was all of the information. Just like, I think, you know what this tells me? One, that people's budget, or that, people's budget, that, well, yeah, that there is like so much organization and planning that is going into all of this, like budgeting, all of this, this effort, because like the presser is like succinct, the info, the graphics, all of it is like, here it is, here's the info. I love that.
That's what we're trying to do. So it's not a lot of money, but it's a proof of concept. So it's really important that we get the word out. And especially if you are working, with folks who are unhoused in either of these regions, we want to be able to have this process include the voices of people in the community, and often those voices that are not heard. This is an opportunity to really be heard and to really say what you need. So please distribute this far and wide, let people know who can participate, and we're really looking forward to being able to conduct the outreach over the next few months and have people vote in August on what they'd like to see. And this being the first of many times that we're able to engage in this kind of process. And in so doing, we join other cities like Seattle and Philadelphia across the nation who have Seattle allocated $30 million from their budget towards this process. So I see them as a goal for us. So once we prove our concept, and after elections, and maybe some new blood is infused into our city council, that we can even add more of our budget to a truly democratic process that allows people to decide where to spend some money.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think the show comes with, like, you obviously have afforded a succinct call to action. I think the other one is just that our listeners continue to pay attention to what's happening at the city and the county level, especially as we're entering into budget season and we're starting to see, where the city and the county want to spend money and where they are choosing potentially to not put money.
And election season.
And election season is coming up. We've talked a lot on the show about the seats that are going to be up for election, which are the odd number seats on the dais. And I think
in the county, it's District 2 and District 5.
So yeah, there's a lot, like this is the time that things are changing. And I think, as time moves on, we'll have more on all of that on the show. We'll also have information soonish about Voices Hang. The Voices co-hosts are all way busier than we were back when we were hanging more. So we're figuring it out. Our calendars are a little wild, but we want to hang out with our listeners. And I guess this is the time that we say, Robin, it was great to have you on as an honorary voice.
Wonderful. Yeah.
I feel so honored. Thank you. It was a lot of fun. I feel like I got a little ranty there in the middle, but you saw me through it. Thank you.
Getting ranty is part of
great. You
being
guys,
on the show.
I love your podcast. So it's an honor to be here.
Well, thank you for joining us. And you can find us as we close out at voicesrivercity.com and on all of the platforms, and anywhere you listen to your podcast, you can find us, and you can also listen to us on the radio as well. And so thank you, Nikki. I don't think you have a whole lot of bleeping to do this episode, but
yeah, you fucking do.
You. Oh, well, there we go. See? Sorry, Nikki. We love you though.
I'm surprised I didn't cuss. Usually I curse like a sailor.
Well, it really was a pleasure, Robin, to have you on, and thank you for the tremendous work that you're doing at the Bee and lifting up really important issues and giving them a really wide platform. It starts conversations, and conversations are the first step to taking action. So I think we really just appreciate that perspective.
Well, thank you. I feel really honored to be able to have this platform and speak. And as a native Sacramentan, it's literally coming home. So it's a dream job.
Well, welcome back, and thanks for being here.
Thank you.
And so with that,
until next week, or what do we do?
Until next time.
Do we do our shit?
We don't usually tell people to like stay safe and stuff. I think we've decided that people, you're grown, live your own lives. Do what you're gonna do. You don't want to be safe, don't be safe.
Don't even.
You don't want to be sane, don't be sane.
Don't do it.
You don't be healthy. I mean, you should probably be healthy, but the other stuff, like whatever, like it is what it is. Like you're grown, you do you. I'm not here to tell you how to live your life.
I think that's an excellent
But you should still stay away from Kempa though. I don't know why, but just off GP, you should stay away from Kempa.
Okay.
Stay away from him, I guess.
Stay away.
Until next Tuesday, folks. You guys are great. Bye-bye.